The last year or more has been a tough one for all of us, and the second wave of COVID 19 has been much worse. To help those affected by the pandemic in India, the podcasting community has come together under the hashtag Pod4Change banner to raise funds through an exclusive NGO partner, Give India. Join Horns Up and hashtag Pod4Change as we look to make a positive impact in the lives of those affected by COVID 19. Please visit the link in the description or simply here it is. Make a note of it. It's tinyurl.com stroke pod for change India. I'll repeat that. That's tinyurl.com stroke pod for change India. Remember, someone really could use the help. Welcome to Horns Up. I'm Animesh.
And I'm Peter.
And this week we are finally turning the spotlight to one of death metal's biggest names, the one and only Morbid Angel. Oh, and did we mention that we're doing it versus style? Yes, we're pitting the Florida-based band's debut and, dare I say, most critically renowned album, Altars of Madness, against its third and, dare I say, most popular album, Covenant, against one another in an effort to find out which one of them is better. It may seem like a futile task because it's all excellent death metal at the end, but hey, give us an idea and we'll run with it. Of course, it's versus. So we need a third to weigh in. And I think, Peter, we've successfully punched way above our weight limits this time, haven't we?
Definitely. I mean, it was one of those crazy things that I had an idea is that, hey, why don't we get him on the podcast? And like it always works with us, Animesh, we just send in an email. But here's someone I'm really glad to introduce on the podcast. Someone I when I got into metal, kept religiously reading his magazine.
Likewise. Digital subscriptions.
I still remember going down to the bookstore in Canada and kind of buying the magazine. So it's a real honor and pleasure to introduce Albert Mudrian. Welcome to Horns Up. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Animesh, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to hopefully execute a Morbid Angel versus with you guys.
Fantastic. So, Albert, before we begin versus, I have to ask, what's your Morbid Angel story? How did you get into the band? And where do you place them on death metal's Hall of Fame at the moment? Because we all know it's very subjective, right?
Right. For me, my Morbid Angel origin story goes back to 1991, but it actually starts with the Hard and Heavy Grind Crusher special edition, or not Grind Crusher, the Hard and Heavy Grindcore special edition. I don't know if you guys were familiar with the Hard and Heavy video series. It was a early 1990s video magazine. So they sold it exclusively at record stores, and it was a VHS. And Hard and Heavy was generally reserved for kind of the hair metal bands of the era. It started in the mid to late 80s in the heyday of that stuff. And generally, it was like Trickster, Doc, and Poison, whatever. And, they talk to these, shitheads on the LA Strip, and they're all like talking about partying. And there's scantily clad, 80s metal ladies circling around them in most of the videos and stuff like that. But for some reason, I don't understand it to this day, they decided to do what they labeled a grindcore special, but it was essentially death metal plus a couple other bands, notably Napalm Death. And it was a lot of exclusive interview footage with the bands, and they would play some, they would intersperse a video clip between the audio or between the interview footage. And it was this video that my small circle of friends and I we worshiped, and we wore it out, because for us, this was 1991, 1992. These bands weren't getting interviewed on MTV. It was literally the first time you were hearing these guys talk. you wouldn't they were the first video interviews you could see with these guys. So it was this landmark piece of, I don't even know what you would call it, I guess promotion, but Morbid Angel was the second band on it, and there was in retrospect, fairly hilarious interview with David Vincent, where he was waxing philosophical about many things, and he was always like very. I don't even want to say he was well spoken as much as he was a commanding speaker. And when you're like, 16, 17, and he is kind of talking about Satanism and the ideas of not fitting in with society and going your own path, et cetera, it was pretty riveting stuff. Not to mention that the video for Immortal Rights was interspersed between that commentary. So that was like, for me, that's like how I got hooked on Morbid Angel, and I went out and got Altars of Madness then, and that just kind of set me off on the path. But as far as where they rank now, I mean, they've certainly had some ups and downs in their catalog. I think they kind of found their footing a little bit with the last one, which, oh man, I can't even remember. What is it?
Kingdoms of Stain.
Yeah. I was like, what letter are we on? Shit, what letter is it? And I was like, no, it's not I, it's not J. J was that live thing. Yeah, no. So I thought that was totally solid, and I'm not one of these people who's like all David Vincent era and out. Far from it. In fact, one of my favorite records is Formula's Fatal to the Flesh. That's one of my, for me, that ranks right behind Altars of Madness and Covenant. I think that record is fantastic and just melts faces every time it's broadcast. So it's kind of a mixed bag with Morbid Angel. It's hard to say what their future is, because it's like, Trey and Tucker and those the two musicians they were playing, that they were touring with. I don't even remember if they're on the record. So, you know what I mean? They don't feel like they have like an important role yet in the band. So it's hard to say where they'll wind up. Obviously, they're not. I wouldn't call them a top 5 death metal band at this point in their career, but I would say that they made some of the best death metal records ever made. And then some of the ones that might not be in that class, like a Domination, or even Blessed Are the Sick. Blessed Are the Sick probably in that class, but something like Domination is still, that's still a really good record. Gateways to Annihilation is still a solid record. So it's, make no mistake, it's a very deep catalog. There's just been some more uneven stuff over the past 15 years or so.
Peter, what about you? What's your Morbid Angel story?
So, considering the amount of death metal I listen to nowadays, it's kind of strange that I got introduced to Morbid Angel much later. And this was a phase again, in the mid 2000s, where I was getting introduced to all these kind of bands in there. So I think it was somebody who recommended that, hey, you're now like listening to more aggressive, like extreme metal or like thrash metal. Why don't you check out Morbid Angel? And with Morbid Angel, I'm sure you would agree, Albert, there's that whole kind of mystery about them, right? There's that whole kind of perception about them before you hear the band. So you always like dive into their discography with some kind of reputation, knowing about them and all of that. And then you always read about these albums more, right? So finally, I think I probably heard Blessed Are the Sick first, and then kind of went in there. But like you said, like it's kind of strange. I still remember when they released their industrial album.
Is that what we're calling it?
I don't know. That's what I would like to call it.
Their
But
attempt to troll the world.
yeah, like so I had a friend who was like totally into it, right? And he actually bought it on vinyl and all of that. And I was just like, I don't know. And this is like before collecting vinyl became the thing. But yeah, like you said, they've had an uneven. So it's basically, if I didn't have a friend who recommended these albums to me, I don't know whether I would have like really got into Morbid Angel, right? What about you, Animesh? I'm curious to know
Hmm.
your story.
Okay, so listeners to the show and Peter, you would know that my introduction to death metal was because of Chuck Schuldiner and Death, right? And then after going through that catalog, which I listened to religiously, I went on to not the brutal side of things, but to the other side of things, which is your atheist and your cynic, and that line. So ultimately, I mean, it's hard to not hear about Cannibal Corpse, but at the same time, in India, weirdly, you don't find Morbid Angel fans, like when you compare them to Cannibal Corpse fans. Um, Eventually, the first song I heard by this band was Where the Slime Live. And that song is not the perfect um, definition or perfect example of a Morbid Angel track. But to me, I thought that the band was into that kind of music. So I got Domination, I heard it, I was okay with it, didn't really enjoy it. But then obviously, the curiosity has been built, and hence you go back and you start listening to the earlier discography, and that's how I got into the band. Um, I'm going to be the dick who says, for me, I'm not a huge Morbid Angel fanboy, but yeah, I think that will help us in this little game of verses.
I'm already like rubbing my palms together at this point.
Yeah, you're an impartial mediator. It's good. It's good.
Maybe, or just the guy who weighs in with his own opinion without being colored by fanboy talk. I don't know.
Right.
Let's see. Okay, then. As we said before, we are pitting Altars of Madness against Covenant. A quick factoid of sorts on both albums before we actually get down to opinions and maybe fisticuffs. Altars of Madness is the band's debut album. Well, if you discount the entire Abominations of Desolation story, that is. Altars was released 12th May 1989, which is weird, right? We're actually celebrating it exactly because this episode is being recorded on 12th May 1989, at least in India at the moment.
Yeah.
Albert, you still have to catch up with the times. Today, depending on which version you're listening to, you'll either get 9 or 10 or 13 songs. We've taken the 10-song album that clocks in at just under 39 minutes. Altars was released through Combat in America and Earache in Europe.
Covenant is the band's third album, and following The Mighty Blessed Are the Sick, Covenant was released on the 22nd of June, 1993. It also features 10 songs, which take around 41 minutes to plow through. I mean, it's good it's 10 songs so that we can do this verses. By now, the band is on Giant in North America and continues with Earache in Europe.
Both albums were recorded at the legendary Morrisound Studios, but yes, we'll address it right away. Covenant was produced, engineered, and mixed by Flemming Rasmussen, the man responsible for making Metallica's Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All sound the way they do. Well, apart from the bass on And Justice for All, that is. You will
that was
find
Lars.
founders-
Lars was responsible for making that sound like that.
Exactly. And I'll never forgive him for that. You will find founders David Vincent, Troy Ascott, and Pete Sandoval on both albums, though Altars also features Richard Brunel on guitars as well. That's a truncated factoid list of sorts to introduce both albums. And here's how this discussion will work. We'll first pit one song from both the albums against each other in the order of their appearance. That's why it's crucial that we pick the 10-song version of Altars to go against the 10-song Covenant. Then we'll talk about the album's overall feel or vision, the artwork, the production, and the legacy. We'll put in our votes, and all of this will hopefully help us objectively arrive at a clear winner. So, Albert and Peter, let's do this.
Yeah, get fired up that spreadsheet, Animesh.
Let's have at it with songs number 1, Immortal Rights from Altars of Madness versus Rapture from Covenant. Peter, why don't you start this one off?
Okay, so I'm gonna put this out there, and I'm gonna keep repeating these things, unfortunately. But come on, man, with Altars of Madness, the entire album, if you don't listen to it like start to finish, it just kind of messes up with that experience because it's just in your face, and like Albert said, right, like face melting, and especially when you listen to it as a young kid, and you have no like background, it's just like when you hear Immortal Rights, it just hits you in the face repeatedly. And I think I might have heard a few grindcore bands prior to this, but when I heard the drums on this, I mean, this is like some next level. Like I was just like, what the hell is going on? Like, how is he playing this kind of stuff? And also the guitars, man, because it's just like going at it. There's no like, how do I say? Like if you listen to like any pop or rock or things, there is like a big breath or a pause. This is nothing of that, right? This is like straight up on Immortal Rights. uh Similarly, so like Rapture is a good song, but then like you literally see like two kind of different sides of the band uh on Immortal Rights and Rapture, right? And this is me all these years later listening to it. I'm just like, wow, like how did these guys kind of go so fast, right? In like a few years, they kind of just their sound, and even though it's recorded both at Morris Sound, you can actually tell. And I mean, unfortunately, I'm listening to it on streaming, and despite Earache releasing the FDR version and all, there is a visible difference in the entire sound, but also the energy. So, having said all of that, my pick is Immortal Rights. Albert, your turn.
Well, I'm going to go in a different direction with that. For me, Immortal Rights is my introduction to Morbid Angel, so it obviously has a kind of a deep personal connection that I can't really shake. And it, under normal circumstances, it would make it difficult to contextualize it beyond that and just kind of be a little more objective about the song and the recording. But that's when it isn't up against Rapture, which happens to be one of the best death metal songs I have ever heard in my entire life. That song, God damn it, that song is to me such a incredible representation of what death metal can achieve. It is the way it is constructed, and you will hear all of these extreme metal musicians who maybe border on okay, they don't border on it, they cross their head, they dive headfirst into pretension. A lot of these dudes, they would tell you that their music is very classical sounding, or it's inspired by classical music, and you just roll your fucking eyes like, oh, yeah, okay, great. But when you listen to the arrangements on Rapture, I actually hear that. I can understand where that's coming from. And that is just not something that I ever kind of number one, nothing I ever expected would come out of death metal, and number two, not something I expected that I would appreciate on such a level. You want to go like the tail of the tape and talk about the production of it. And obviously we'll have to do this each time in some ways, but man, what Flemming Rasmussen was able to bring out of them in a song like that, I think like, his ability like to present everything where I can hear the guitars, I can hear the drums, like there's the separation of it where it isn't a blur, even though Sandoval and Trey are fucking flying on those songs. And David Vincent's voice, like for me, Covenant is where he is at his best, where he's going deeper, but still enunciating and hasn't kind of crossed over into that semi-professional wrestler delivery thing that he had going on, like by the time we got to the end of his Morbid Angel tenure. So yeah, for me, I just obviously these are two of the best songs Morbid Angel have ever written, but I just think that Rapture is a high water mark for the band. It might be my favorite Morbid Angel song ever. So it's, it's just to me, it's Immortal Rights is in the wrong place at the wrong time up against Rapture. Let's just put it that way.
So it comes to the layman with his perspective to break this gridlock of sorts. And the layman has this to say. Here's the thing, right? When you pit these two songs against the other, they both are fantastic album openers. However, Immortal Rights sounds fresh. Rapture sounds focused. Immortal Rights had me going, what is this band? And Rapture has me going, oh, it's Morbid Angel and they're fucking back. As Albert said, I prefer the vocals and I prefer the brutality on Rapture. But I'm going to give my vote to Immortal Rights because it had me going, holy shit, what is this band? And I think that's the X factor that Rapture doesn't have. Immortal Rights will get a new fan in. Rapture will make that fan go, fuck yes. So for me, I'm going to give it to Immortal Rights for this one. Okay. We're off to a good start. I can see that this one is going to be a good episode, good discussion. Let's move on to tracks number 2. Altars of Madness has Suffocation and Covenant has Pain Divine. Let me just straight out say this as a bass player, fucking yes, bass solo on Suffocation. And the riff that follows it is so fucking fun. It's bouncy as shit. I wouldn't expect that from a band like Morbid Angel on first listen. Pain Divine, it's intense, right? But at the same time, it's so straightforward that for me, I'm giving it to Suffocation. Peter, where do you stand on this?
It's strange, and I think it's just the whole aspect of me revisiting this album. But it's like I said earlier on also, right? It's just when you listen to these tracks back to back, like if I heard these albums completely separate, it would be different. When you hear them track to track, it makes you kind of wonder, and it shows a stark difference. And for me, while you said you found Pain Divine focused and precise, I found Suffocation like the precise track in there. It's just like I don't know. I mean, maybe it's me being me at this time in there, but I am very partial to like heavier stuff like Suffocation. And I don't know, maybe it was in the mix. I'm gonna find a different mix, but the mix I heard for Pain Divine on streaming was, I think it was the FDR one. The drums, it kind of, there is something different on there, right? With the FDR version. Correct me if I'm wrong, Albert.
That's the full dynamic range version?
Yeah.
Man, I haven't. I'll tell you a secret. I don't stream any earache releases because I don't want to give them any money. So I just listen to the.
Oh my god!
I just listen to the rips of the CDs. So I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you, Peter.
So I'm guessing you're not a fan of the FDR and all of that, right?
I don't get there. No.
Okay. But for me, just kind of listening back to back, and that's what I found kind of strange, right? And I'll address it in later tracks. It just seems like in the first couple of tracks, I don't know what is up with the mix or what they've done in there, but I was struggling to listen to this track. But so yeah, just
Peter, you should definitely listen to the original version. Find it on streaming because, oh my god, Pain Divine sounds fucking.
Yeah,
wow.
So I think it's also partly that. But having said that, since my pick is Suffocation, Albert, you want to Go
We'll
for
make
it.
this easy. We'll go 3 for 3. And as
Awesome.
Animesh pointed out to start, fucking bass break, man. Like that, like when I think, because like you just say that song and it's the first thing that comes into my mind. Boom, 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 boom,
Exactly.
you know? And I think that's like that's the thing about Altars of Madness just in general is that it's still not really a pure death metal album. You know, it's there's enough material on it that was written years prior that was kind of reshaped into a death metal mold, whether it was just, you know, getting faster, vocals getting more guttural, getting more intense, just over a period of time as death metal became more of an established genre in the late 90s. That was something, you know, that you can, you know, and we'll go through this with other songs that we'll discuss the death metalizing of some of the tracks that were definitely thrashier from, you know, Abomination's era, Morbid Angel. But I think Suffocation still has that kind of, there's still a bit of a thrash vibe to the presentation of it, which I really like. The, you know, a sound like if you took that song out of context, and people didn't know who Morbid Angel were, and you just kind of played them that song, they might just say, "Oh, this is kind of death thrash." I don't know if this is death metal. You know, I don't know if this is straight death.
Yeah.
Where Pain Divine is kind of a death metal steamroller track, without it being, you know, it's not super exciting, but it's not laborious at any point either. It really is like, it has all the hallmarks of a really solid death metal song, and I think it is, and I think it works really well as a nice come down for me anyway after Rapture on the record. So it certainly serves its purpose, and I think it also stands on its own. And I believe it was a song that they were playing live again, not too long ago. They maybe even played it on the Decibel tour if I went back and checked it out. But I do remember that seeing it within the past few years make its way back into the set, and I thought that was kind of interesting because it wouldn't have been something that I would have normally expected to reappear like that. But it's certainly a good song, but the edge I think is clearly to Suffocation on this one.
Nice. We have our first all 3 strikes. That's good, I guess. We'll find out. Let's move on to track number 3. Visions from the Dark Side on Altars versus World of Shit on Covenant. And Albert, I'd like you to kick this one off.
Well, let's talk about World of Shit, The Promised Land for a second, which is kind of the first tempo change in a major way on either of the records, where they kind of start slinking back a little bit into some of the stuff that got them in trouble with the purists on
Blessed Are the Sick. Yeah.
The slow album, as it were, as it was criticized at the time, which is, you know, clearly a misrepresentation of what that record was and accomplished. But that was one of those moments that was, or World of Shit is one of those moments that kind of harkens back to that of a band, those first steps of a band kind of expanding their sound a bit and playing with the tempos. But again, you know, there's a blast section on it that's ridiculously fast, and it's a super song. And you know, on the other hand, you know, Visions from the Dark Side is a you know, it's a great Morbid Angel song. It's on Altars of Madness, so it's great. You know, you just like, there's nothing weak about that record. But I don't think it's one of those songs that has kind of resonated in the way that maybe other tracks from the record have. Like I couldn't tell you the last time I heard them do that one live, you know, as an example. So I think that just to try to be fair and to try to, I think, maybe this isn't the best way to do it, but I think that if you're looking for some balance and looking also at the two songs individually, but in the context of the record, I think I give the edge to World of Shit here, just because I think it has a dynamic approach that maybe Visions from the Dark Side lacks.
Peter.
So can I address the part that suddenly in Visions in the middle there's a bleh, and I was just like, what? When I was listening to it, I was like, what's going on out there? And I totally agree with what you were talking earlier, right, Albert, about how this album, if you think about it, and I'm guessing that's part of its appeal to me now, is that it's not like a pure death metal album. There's a lot of like thrash elements in there. Even towards the last minute, I don't know if you guys felt it, but there was like a bit of like a black metalish riff that they had on Visions, which is kind of neat in there. But yeah, the pace really kind of makes sense in there, and when you're kind of going with the album in terms of World of Shit. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still sticking to Visions from the Dark Side as my pick, because
I'm gonna predict that Peter doesn't pick any songs from Covenant before.
I know Albert already has seen this through.
Okay, all right.
Like
So-
you just like decided the rest of the episode for me.
Well, if that's the way it's gonna be, that's the way it's gonna be. But I'm actually with Albert on this one. World of Shit slows it down. When you listen to the two tracks, right, one after the other, you actually remember World of Shit. You might not remember Visions, even though it's danceable and groovy at the same time, which is weird for a thrash death or a death thrash album, right? Or for that kind of a song. World of Shit is just more interesting, and I love the riffs after the solo. So I'll make a simple decision. It's World of Shit for me. You remember that song?
Yeah, of course. And I think that's one of those things. I mean, the next song actually is where I'm coming at, but sure, go ahead.
Alrighty, cool. So let's get into song number 4. Maze of Torment from Altars versus Covenants. Vengeance is mine. Peter, since you brought it up,
Man,
Start.
so like when you come into Vengeance is Mine, right? You actually see them picking up the pace. And I don't know, none of us have kind of talked about it, but have you guys like noticed the solos on Covenant, right? Like they're so different compared to Altars of Madness. It's just like kind of, I don't know, when I was reading about it, it's like, you know, Trey took inspiration from Pink Floyd, just kind of like letting it rip in there. Did you guys read that part?
no, I haven't read that story. I thought of it as basically Morbid Angel going, holy shit, we are sick and tired of the Slayer comparisons.
Yeah.
We play much better.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh god. But yeah, so like, I mean, for me, this is also on Maze of Torment. Pete Sandoval is on fucking fire, man. Like the pace that he's drumming at. If I was a young kid listening to this all over again, I would have probably been like, I want to play drums. There, that kind of showcase he's putting on in there. And I really enjoyed also when I'm just looking at my notes, the solo in Vengeance is Mine. Like that's something I really enjoyed. But yeah, this is a tough, because like the pace of both tracks is kind of the same, and I don't know why Animesh is
I'm
laughing.
laughing because you're clearly going to go with Maze of Torment, aren't you?
Albert has kind of predicted my picks for the rest of them.
Try and be as PC as you want, but yeah.
I'm
Wait.
looking at both aspects of the.
Sure.
Go.
I'll weigh in on this. Yeah, well, sorry, but I'm going with Maze of Torment as well. It's and I'll tell you why. Two parts of the song that I really, really, really enjoy. One are the riffs that come in, or the bit that comes in just after the second solo, and the other one is the outro, which is so evil, right? Like it's unnerving with the whole slow and fast that's happening. It 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 again to me, as a song, is more interesting than Vengeance is Mine, which just basically is, it's like, if I were to visualize Vengeance is Mine, I would liken it to a butcher who's been told to slaughter 50 goats in 15 minutes. So all he can do is just go dop doop 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 dop doop. It's that consistently heavy all throughout, right? So for me, that makes Maze of Torment the far more interesting track, and which is why I'm going to go with that. Of course, not to mention the yeah. Who doesn't love a good vocal hit?
Yeah.
Albert, are you with
I'm-
us?
I am 100% with you both, and not just because of Evil D's maniacal laughter. I think his Maze of Tuh is also a highlight on not just the song and the album, but just on late '80s death metal in general. No, it's there's a couple really easy decisions in this, and this is one of them. um, don't get me wrong, Vengeance is Mine is ripping. It's on Covenant. Covenant doesn't have any duds either. It's why it's why this exercise is what it is. But Maze of Torment it's one of, in my mind, 3 songs from Altars that are indisputably iconic. And Immortal Rights was one of them. This is another, and we'll get to the third shortly. But yeah, this to me, it's just one of those. It's one of the highlights of the record. It is super intense. It's super catchy. It's movements, the swells to Sandoval's blast beats. I mean, I don't know, man. I just have I have memories of interviewing Trey and David for Choosing Death like a billion years ago, and trying to get the stories out of them about the early days, the pre-Altars days. And I just remember David telling me the stories about how Pete learning how to play drums, that he would just sit behind his kit for hours and hours and hours while they were gone for the day at work, and just work on his footwork and his speed. And from where he was when he joined the band, I guess in '87, to where he was when they recorded that in '89. That's just one of those songs that in my head, I apply that story to, because I think it's probably a very acute example of the work that he put in and how it paid off. Because I mean, the blasting is ridiculous, and it's definitely one of those things where you talk about those oh shit, this is death metal moments, and that song is one of those. And I mean, yeah, so I'll shut up. It's Maze of Torment very easily.
Fantastic.
No, I love these stories, because reading your books is part of the reason why we kind of got you in there on this episode.
Yep. Okay, so let's move on to tracks number 5, Lord of All Fevers and Plague versus Lion's Den. And I'll let me kick this one off, because I'll keep my views extremely short. The only part of Lion's Den that genuinely interested me was the second half that kind of begins at 2 minutes 53 seconds around. Yeah, that part, just that interlude, that's my biggest takeaway from that song. However, weirdly enough, what I enjoyed really on Lord of All Fevers and Plague wasn't the music as much as it's the lyrics and the vocal lines itself. Please educate me. What the hell is he saying in that chorus?
I
Is
think
it really like I don't know? There's no relevant information on the internet either.
isn't it a Sumerian chant?
Because
I
he
always
keeps repeating it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's that. I honestly
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I've seen forum discussions where somebody mentions that it's to summon the old Sumerian gods, and everybody else is going like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah. I think it's an old school Sumerian chant. And again, you kind of talk about this mysticism that surrounded the early Morbid Angel stuff. This kind of magical appeal that perhaps Deicide lacked. So, like,
Deicide just forced you to like, hey, this is what the song is about.
Yeah. There's no room for interpretation with
Exactly.
Deicide. But no, this song, man, yeah, I agree that it is just the David's delivery and the cadence and how odd it is to attempt to sing along to these lyrics and how much fun it really is. I mean, I'm sure they weren't thinking fun, but man, like that's an element that is rarely attributable to death metal. And yeah, I mean, I'm with you with the Lion's Den. It's totally solid. And there's moments where like the second half where it kind of kicks in a lot of ways. I agree. That's like where I kind of like, I perk up like, oh yeah, this song's pretty awesome. But those unique elements that Lord of All Fevers and Plague have that you don't get out of most death metal songs, it's pretty easy to lean that way on that one too. So
So
we'll
Peter, of course, this is going to be a home run, right? Because
let Peter do the hat trick here.
Yeah. I mean, like I could when you were talking about those parts, it still played in my head, the vocals, and that's the thing about this track, right? I mean, like everyone talks about, on Altars of Madness, it's the drums, it's the guitars and stuff like that. This is one of those tracks where the vocals actually for you are memorable and you can talk about and remember much later. But yeah, I think let's move on to the next one.
Alrighty,
Five
cool.
for five. He's five for five.
He's 5 for 5. Alrighty. Tracks number 6, we've got Chapel of Ghouls from Altars of Madness versus Blood on My Hands from Covenant. Peter, take this one off. Is it going to be 6 for 6 for you?
Yeah, I don't know. Like my notes, actually, I don't know why. I'm just looking at what I'd written, and for me, I didn't really enjoy much about Blood on My Hands. But what I did really enjoy, and I think this is something that they introduced different, is I don't know if you've read this up, but it's like these synth parts that they've got on Chapel of Ghouls that kind of play in the background in there, and then add more to that kind of atmosphere to the track.
Okay.
So is that synth? I don't know. This is the non-musician. Yeah. That's
I think that.
Yeah. So that was where like they did something different on the album, really, right? In terms of the sound. Albert, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I want to defend Blood on My Hands for a second because I think that's actually a really good song and is one of David's best vocals and one of his better vocal hooks on the record. I think it's one of the more memorable sing-along, like there isn't really a chorus in it, but like when you get to that end break where he, clearly growls blood on my hands and it kind of shifts into that end mid-pace riff that just crushes. Like that rules. But this is the third of what I think are 3 iconic songs from this album in in Chapel of Ghouls from Altars. That's just, you can't fuck with that song. That's just, don't like. I think that's probably the first death metal song that I knew all the lyrics to. You know, in terms of, if you want to talk about a catchy song, that's definitely I mean, I still know all the words to that song. And there's like, for as much as I like death metal, there's probably not a ton of those songs that I can sing along every word to now that I think about it. And yeah, that's, I mean, you know, going back to, and like the evolution of that song, when you listen to the Abominations version with Browning, like, I mean, it sounds cool. It's still like that original version still holds up. And when I saw Nocturnus AD at MDF, I don't know how many years ago, probably 6 or 7 at this point. It's all a blur. There were a lot of MDFs. Been to a lot of MDFs. Like, and they played that, and it was like, it was great because it sounded just like the Abominations version. It was sloppy and messy, and they fucked it up at the start and had to start it over like 20 seconds in. It was great. And then when you listen to the Altars version, and just what a killer, catchy, like, just iconic track. And yeah, to me, that's like that's the moment from that record where it's just like, it's really clear that this band is not like other death metal bands. You know what I mean? Like, where you really see who they are, what they're capable of. To me, I think it's the best song on the record. And again, sorry, Blood on My Hands, you're very good, but you don't have a prayer here.
Okay, so here's you spoke about the synth, right, Peter, and that's literally what had me going about Chapel of Ghouls, because here's my take on it. Like, for a listener who's listening to that album today without any perspective of what happened earlier, I'm sure Chapel of Ghouls, for the time that it was released in, it lives up to the horror that the name conjures, right? Today, because of the synths, it sounds like a Halloween decoration or something that you might play to, you know, set up the mood to being scary. Having said that, Blood on My Hands, for the other matter, while listening to both the songs repeatedly, I prefer Blood on My Hands while listening to it. But I, again, give more points to Chapel of Ghouls because, yes, it's iconic. And I think that's because of the ambience that it manages to conjure. It's because of the atmosphere. It's because of the synths. It's because of how scary it wants to sound, and it tries, and I think it does a good job of it. And yes, it's signature. I mean, it is unfucked with the bill. Yeah. Also, it mentioned Satan, so yeah, why not? Yeah, it's a hat trick. It's a hat trick, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So now it's time for tracks number 7. We've got Bleed from the Devil from Altars versus Angel of Disease from Covenant. And I'm going to start this one off again. Being a part of a hardcore band, I love the fact that Angel of Disease starts off with the D-beat intro. Yay, hardcore. It's full on hardcore. They also mentioned Blood of Kingu, right? That's awesome. And the bass is actually doing so much more than just coloring within the lines, right? And the fact that you can actually hear it, and the fact that the band allows you to hear it, yay. Also, I love the outro mindfuck with hardcore and the slow groove together. It's almost like a formula or a signature of sorts that you expect from a Morbid Angel album, right? Considering this is the 3rd album and I've done it before. But yeah, it manages to work yet again. The only thing I'll say is I love the intensity and the brutality for Bleed for the Devil, but I found that it was a tad bit too much. So yeah, it's very clear for me. This one, Angel of Disease, hands down. Who can tell me that I'm wrong?
So
Peter?
let me put this. Did you think that like the track was ending at like the 4-minute mark? Because at that point you're like, okay, this track's done, and you're waiting for the next intro to come in or something, and suddenly it just continues in
Exactly, right? That's why I said it's such a mindfuck.
there. Yeah, I mean, I'm now gonna keep repeating myself in there. You know what my pick is. That's why I spoke about Angel of Disease first. But
Okay.
the mid paceness, I don't know. Albert, please tell me more, and please tell me why I'm wrong.
Here's why you're wrong.
I knew it was coming.
Because you're picking Bleed for the Devil over Angel of Disease. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. Here's the thing. Angel of Disease is so much more of an Altars of Madness song than Bleed for the Devil is. Angel of Disease, like, obviously its roots go back to Abominations. It's one of those, it's an earlier Morbid Angel song. And it's one of the, they would re-record tracks from their early days on, obviously on Altars, on Blessed, on Covenant, and then again on Formulas Fatal to the Flesh. And that era of the band is so, oh man, there is just such this mystical fucking vibe to that period of like 1986 Morbid Angel, even 87 Morbid Angel when you get into the Thy Kingdom Come demo. But the way they're able, like, generally speaking, when a band re-records something, I'm out. I am not on board with it. But the fact that they managed to somehow capture that and transport it to the present day, with Angel of Disease in particular, and that just like, that's a thrash song, man. That's not really a death metal song. It's a thrash song. Trey's vocals on it are like totally fucked up and Trey-ish in every manner possible. It's so catchy, it's so hooky, and like the weird parts where it like goes from the like main riff like, dun, 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 to like the melting lava solos that he just like works in there, and then back out into the riff and then into the melting solo. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all, and it rules because of it. And Bleed for the Devil is good, it's solid, it's really good, but it's not one of the highlights of Altars, in my opinion. Whereas, Angel of Disease is a classic Morbid Angel song that was repurposed for this record and done well. Most fans hadn't heard it previous to that. And those of us who, I knew people who hadn't heard it and they didn't understand that song. It's like, because that song just doesn't really fit. I mean, it fits in the record when you listen to it contextually, but like, if you're like, which one of these songs isn't like the other songs on the album, that's the one that you pick. But I just think it makes the album stronger for it and makes it more dynamic. And I can't say enough about songs like Angel of Disease, Chapel of Ghouls, from Thy Kingdom Come, and from Formula's Covenant of Death. Like, if Morbid Angel ever want to play a special set at a Decibel event, and they don't, by the way, but if they did, I'd be like, you know what? Don't do an album. Just do all those fucking songs. Like, do all that. Like, just let me hear like 50 minutes of that and have my brain melted and my soul eviscerated simultaneously. Okay, I'll shut up about Angel of Disease, but it's Angel of Disease.
Yeah, no. So just to kind of try try and bring this into context while listening to both tracks, it's very clear and it's crystal clear how much fun the band seems to be having on Angel of Disease. I don't get that vibe from Bleed for the Devil. Anyways, let's move on to track number 8, which is Damnation from Altars versus Sworn to the Black from Covenant. Albert, start this one off for us.
Sworn to the Black. Sworn to the Black is that's to me, that's the last like high water moment of Covenant for me. Like that to me in a lot of ways should have been the closing song on this album. And I'm not ready to disparage what comes after that track just yet. But that song is a total crusher. It is a total catchy death metal steamroller, and it's the other song that's kind of in the mold in my estimation of Rapture. It's like kind of a sister song to Rapture. So for me, obviously, it connects and appeals to me greatly in that respect. Damnation is solid, but it's there. I've always felt that there's a little bit of a lag on the second half of Altars. Peter, control yourself. I know you're ready to
No,
you're ready to lash out. You're ready to lash out. I can feel it.
No.
But but I do think that the level dips a little bit, and it's not because those songs aren't good. Everything on Altars is good, but Altars is a top heavy record in my opinion, where the best stuff is within like the first 5 or 6 tracks. So what comes after it just only suffers by comparison. On its own, it's really, really good. But then, and maybe that's part of the reason why I lean towards Sworn to the Black on this one. But yeah, I go Sworn.
I completely get what you're saying, because Damnation, I feel it suffers from the problem of plenty or just similarity. You've heard so much stuff earlier that you feel that Damnation is a run-of-the-mill song. Yes, solid, but not a highlight. Whereas Sworn to the Black, even though it's more of the same, it still feels cohesive. It feels focused. It feels like it's written for a purpose, and which is why Sworn to the Black is my pick as well. Peter, come on, lash out at us.
I don't know why. Like, this is one of the tracks I've made notes for everything, but I just have nothing written for this except saying that, okay, it's Damnation. So I don't know why I picked. I can't remember. Sorry, guys. Brain fart moment. But I just, if I may ask you, Albert, the reason you said, like, it's a top heavy track, and this is just a theory of mine. Please feel free to kind of blitz it to the ground or whatever. Is it part of, say, because of the way or the format that music was released back then? Like, we're listening to it, of course, now on streaming or CDs, but back then it was put on records, right? So you had like side A, side B, whereas here we're just looking at it as 10 tracks. Is that, do you say one of the reasons?
No, not for me personally, because I was consuming media at that time on CD. By the time I had, because like I had this record in 1991, I wasn't buying much vinyl at that time at all. It was almost all CD, with probably a few cassettes mixed in back then still. So it was still definitely like you spent time with the full record because number one, you were a 16-year-old who liked Morbid Angel, so you didn't have to worry about anybody else wanting to talk to you, so you would have plenty of time by yourself to appreciate these albums. And number two, you made an investment in these records, that like an actual monetary investment. You spent $16-17 on a CD, so you were going to you were going to dig in to that shit. It wasn't going to just be like, oh, this is, this sounds pretty good. I'll check out more of this later. No, this was just like, this is the only thing I'm listening to for the next 3 weeks until I have another, $20 to get to the mall and get a CD. Yeah. So, no, I not for me in particular with the way I was consuming media. I think it just, like I said, the 3 songs that are just pillars of underground death metal that are on this record. I just think that it makes it maybe a little harder for the second half to stack up against it. And again, it isn't necessarily because they're bad songs. They're really good songs and super memorable. And I have listened to them probably like well over 100 times. It's just, like I said, I just think it's just a little top heavy, but I don't know how you avoid it other than just saying, okay, maybe flip the track listing of Evil Spells and Chapel of Ghouls, but I don't think that necessarily solves anything,
So wait, Peter, which one are you going for on this?
I said Damnation, but I don't have any notes for some reason.
Here, I'll give you a note.
It's fine.
Damnation is the one on Altars of Madness, so you went with that.
Exactly.
That's your note.
Okay, so coming up to the penultimate tracks here, you've got Blasphemy on Altars versus Nar Mataru. Yeah, did I say that right? On Covenant. Yeah. So obviously this one you can't really compare.
I was just wondering how we're doing it also. Yeah,
this is the one unfair one that we have to
this is an unfair one. So let me put it into perspectives. I ended up comparing or drawing parallels with the samples on both tracks. So yeah, what are the bullets for? What's the singing bowls for? Because to me, weirdly enough, the samples were the most enjoyable part of Blasphemy. And for what it's worth, I really dug the atmosphere on Nar Mataru because, I don't know. I think it sets up a story that they're trying to tell with the last song, right? And it does it perfectly. So it's again fit for purpose, which is why I'll end up going for Nar Mataru. Though that doesn't make any sense because Blasphemy is actually a song.
It is, but I think it makes some sense in the context. If you're in the context of the record and like you said, what it's setting up for, what comes next, it works really well. And again, I think Blasphemy is great, but it's one of those songs that's on the back half of Altars that isn't Chapel of Ghouls. So it's going to suffer by comparison. But I'm still, I understand and appreciate your logic, but I probably still head to head just default to Blasphemy because I'm fucking Hamilton.
No, it is a song. I get
it is a song. It qualifies as a song.
Hey, on Spotify, they'll still get money for everyone who streams Nar Mataru, right? So because it's more than 30 seconds.
True.
So I'm guessing it's Blasphemy for you, right?
I just wrote my notes. Are you saying, are we even considering this comparison in there?
Cool. We'll just move on to the last tracks. Then tracks number 10, Evil Spells from Altars versus God of Emptiness from Covenant. Peter, kick this one off.
Can we please talk about the vocals on this track?
On which track?
On God of Emptiness.
Sure.
I was just like, and it took me by surprise, right? Because by the end of this album, you think, they've done there, and then you've got those vocals. How would you classify those vocals, the second vocals that come in? Like I've written like VO type. It's like a voiceover of sorts. Or like an evil voiceover kind of talking over it.
So here's my take. The vocal lines and that's the way the song is, right? Even though it's the least Morbid Angel, but it is so Morbid Angel because it's fucking unnerving to listen to. Like if Imagine this. You're listening to Narmataru, followed by God of Emptiness in a dark, abandoned house somewhere with only your headphones. You are going to probably have the scariest night of your life. It manages to do that. It's unnerving as fuck. So before you even say a word, I'm going to go with God of Emptiness. And now, Peter, make your case for evil spirits or evil spells.
I say that, you know what, they still and this is what I've written, it's they still got gas left in the tank. Like at this point you think that, you know what, they're just gonna like let it go. And I do like the solo that's in the middle of the track. So that's what I've got. Albert?
I think that
This is why I love fucking discussing metal.
I think that the way that God of Emptiness is constructed, it's really easy to put the emphasis on David Vincent's vocals because they're different from death metal. But do not lose sight of the sick fucking riff that Trey is laying down on the song. That riff just destroys, man. That's like him, like everything that they tried to do with the mid-pace stuff on Covenant or on Domination that didn't quite work. Like that's it all working in that moment. Like on God of Emptiness. I absolutely love the twisted mid-paced riff of that song. And the outro riff, I have a real soft spot for doom and death doom, and when I hear that, I definitely hear some elements of that. Not that Trey had heard any bands that sounded goddamn thing like that when he wrote that, and there's absolutely no way he was influenced by it, but I can hear like in my head like the parallels of the way it's constructed, and why it appeals to me in the way that a lot of that stuff appeals to me. That said, Evil Spells fucking rules too. And it's another one of those Abominations holdovers, so it gets some extra points just for that and that feel and that vibe and that, like, again, the death metaling of a thrash song, because that's what that is ultimately. It's catchy. It's a little bit of an awkward chorus in the way the riff just kind of like almost falls down some stairs as it's being played. But all of that said, I think even though God of Emptiness is fairly ridiculous, and I have a vivid memory of watching them at a Scion Rock Festival with my friend Kevin Sharp, formerly of Brutal Truth, and just basically watching him mock the delivery of like the side of stage, like just like a cat I'm stalking. Like he was literally doing this. So like that is, that's the war that's going on inside my head with knowing that Trey is like laying down this fucking sick, like mid-paced riff that is not getting the attention it deserves because of this. But I'm still going God of Emptiness.
I think like I'll never be able to like now listen to that song without actually me seeing you do this.
Sorry.
That's a visual that we'll keep. So what's clear is that at the moment, Peter, you've just straight ahead picked out almost
like Albert called it.
Not even one single
We're pretty clear where we were headed.
What's weird is
despite that,
both, no, not despite that. So right, we are assigning points to this, man. I'm assigning points. But what I would like to bring out is top heavy of Altars and bottom part of Covenant. That is at the moment in terms of the songs. However, if
it's
you
not
were to
just
go
about
by
the songs,
points, right? If you go by the points, damn, like because of you just not picking anything from Covenant, it's Altars of
thought it
Madness
would
has 20 points versus Covenant's 10.
I thought it would be the opposite. Like both of you would outweigh me in a way.
Let's see. Okay, let's see. So that's as far as the song versus song goes. Let's quickly get into overall albums. Which one of the two albums would you listen to as an album, or which one of them have you actually heard as an album, start to finish, more number of times? Simple question. Peter, I'm not going to ask you this because you'll just say Altars again.
Yeah, I'm just like wondering why you're looking at me for stuff like this.
Okay,
Like,
Albert, what about?
You're
what about
disqualified from this question.
Albert has the stories. Albert should go for it.
Probably
you?
Altars.
Which one have you spent more? Altars?
Probably Altars. And it isn't necessarily because I don't like Covenant. As we, over the last hour plus, I would assume we've learned that I really, really like Covenant. And that, man, I don't know. They're really, really close. I guess I have to. Damn, this is harder than I thought it would be. I didn't think I'd have to pick between the two before it was all over. I thought I was just. I guess I go Altars, but it is just like by the closest of hairs. It's a photo finish, and I don't feel confident in even saying it out loud. Not that I feel confident in saying Covenant if I picked it.
Okay, it's Altars for me too. That's the album that I've spun more, and I'll tell you why. I think it boils down to the flavor of death metal that you're looking for, right? If you're looking for intensity and brutality, you'll go with Covenant each and every time because it delivers on that front. It is the more intense album. Altars gives you that and more. It gives you more flavors. It gives you more to choose from. It gives you different song styles. It gives you the thrash element. It just gives you more than regular death metal, right? So it makes for a more not just accessible, but also a more fun listen. If you were the only metalhead in a car and you only had these two albums to play along with you in the car, you would put on Altars because there's more things for you to talk about than Covenant. That's a filter that I'm using. So yeah, for me, that's why it's Altars. Unless you keep on playing like Narmataru and God of Emptiness as loop.
My son wouldn't appreciate that.
Okay, then clearly you're getting your son to be follow in your footsteps. No, I have to listen to Altars.
No, I said my son wouldn't appreciate getting spooked out by that.
Okay, cool. So more points towards Altars. Let's talk artwork. Which one of the two has the better artwork? Peter.
Come on, man. Like
Altars, fine.
Yeah, that scene grave. Come on, that's some iconic. I mean, you see that anywhere, and you know that's Morbid Angel. I mean, I would even go to the extent that okay, wait, I'm gonna stop. I want to hear Albert's story on this.
So, I'm with you that it's Altars, but a friend of mine has forever altered the way that I look at this album cover, and I'm gonna pass this along and curse you.
Oh no!
Yeah. I mean, like if you put them side by side, like I mean, I remember thinking Covenant at the time when I got it was like mature, and in retrospect, it looks kind of cheesy and not super well executed. It's still like, as for a Morbid Angel cover goes, the bar is pretty low since their cover art is generally atrocious. So it's like it's definitely on the higher end of like Morbid Angel covers, Covenant. But there's just like kind of too much going on. It's difficult to focus on one thing. The art director could have reined it in a little. Altars of Madness is iconic, obviously. But my dear friend Jeff Walker of Carcass once referred to this as Morbid Angel's Mad Magazine album cover.
Oh God.
And I've not been able to unsee that for about 20 years.
Oh my God, Jeff Walker.
That said, I still think I go with more. Dan Seagrave is I mean, he is a legend. He is the man. No disrespect to Ed Repka and the early Death stuff. But to me, it's Dan Seagrave who set the bar for what a death metal album cover should look like. You know, the fact that Dan and I are friends probably colors it a little bit, and that, you know, and that he actually painted the cover of the revised version of Choosing Death. I won't deny that I'm partial in some ways, but also, like, I'm pretty sure even without that, it would, you know, you would end up going back to altars. I mean, just if you want to do the simplest of tests, how many Covenant tattoos have you seen versus how many Altars of Madness tattoos have you seen?
You can't really, I mean, what part of the Covenant album cover do you tattoo, right?
Right. Like, oh, the quail. Is that like, is there one of those on there? The ink blots? Like,
Okay, so I'll try and sum this up in with two perspectives, and this stems from reading somewhere that the band wanted Covenant to look mature, right? So here's my first take, which is, if you evaluate the two album covers, which one is more Morbid Angel? Clearly, it's Altars, right? No question about it. Which one of the two would you can you actually bring back home and not have a conversation about and sneak into your room? It's Covenant. Maybe that's what the band was going for with the mature thing, because Covenant had all this hype around it, and because they were on Giant, it had so much more media presence and promotion about it that the band wanted you to feel safe while listening to this record or bringing it home or buying it at the store. Maybe that's just my kind of way to explain why they did what they did on Covenant. Also, yeah, like full points to them to dabble with photography rather than just illustration again. But as an album art, which one would I wear on a t-shirt? You can't wear Covenant on a t-shirt. So it has to be Altars. Which one is more iconic? Which one is more about the band? Which one helps you visualize what the band is? It's definitely Altars. So yeah, I'll give my vote to Altars as well. Cool. So it's almost like a clean sweep now at the end, but we still have 2 points to discuss. The first one being production. Which one of the two production styles do you prefer? I'll lay this out. I loved the, again, the oral intensity and the heights or the peak to which Covenant raises to, and that's a masterful job. I think that's what brutal death metal is supposed to sound like, but I enjoy the looseness and the jamminess and the slight hey, this is our studio debut album and we're still a little bit unsure of how everything works, so we just want to try and sound as close to a live band as possible. Appeal of Altars. So at this moment, on this day, I'm picking Altars, but yeah, if I'm in a mood for brutality, I'll pick Covenant. Peter.
I'm actually, honestly, and this is the first pick I'm going to give for Covenant.
Finally.
The reason being is, and I guess it's also because the version I heard, right? Imagine, the Covenant production with the kind of songs that you had on Altar of Madness.
Wow. Okay. I'm not sure it would work.
But I'm just saying, like, in terms of, like, I and this is again now, if I have to, like, listen back to and kind of see, I kind of liked the Covenant production. Please, Albert, I hope at least on this we're on the same page.
Yeah, we are. No disrespect to the Morris brothers, but Fleming Rasmussen I mean, with an extreme metal record, it's to me, again, there's something about the full presentation of Covenant is so, we use the word mature, but it's also so professional. And it's easy to forget in 1993 when this record came out. This was on Giant Records. Morbid Angel had, in a lot of people's minds, sold out by signing with a major, because in America, there was no earache logos, nothing to do with earache. This was 100% Giant Records in America, and it was a big deal. And we were concerned that this was going to be like a record where Morbid Angel sold out, softened up their sound, and then when we heard Rapture, because that was a video that came out in advance of the record by like a week or two, it was like, oh, I guess they're not fucking around. And that video was also really slick and very like creepy and evil. It was kind of fucked up. And that whole presentation of it, with like the fact that was on a major and they hadn't backed down at all. And it sounded cleaner and better, but it still sounded heavier, especially coming off Blessed Are the Sick, which the production was just never right on that record. It was just like this really dry guitar sound, and the drums were all up front and the guitar was buried. So, just keep in mind that just being older and like discovering a lot of this music sequentially, you're kind of along for the ride with the development, and seeing where they went with Covenant and hearing where they went with Covenant, I preferred that, because it was just this exciting evolution at the time. And you knew that they took great care in what they were doing, and it paid off. And I don't need to hear, I don't need any other Morbid Angel record to sound like Covenant. I don't want to hear Altars of Madness for the Covenant production. I certainly don't want to hear Covenant with an Altars of Madness production. So I think for me, I lean towards Covenant.
Cool, fantastic. Finally, some points for Covenant at the end, but yep, just as one talking point to go through, which is overall legacy as such of the two albums. Which one is a better fit for the discography? Or if the question largely being, if you had only one album of Morbid Angel that you could listen to for the rest of your life, between these two, which one would you pick?
Me? Peter?
Of course. Come on. When I'm pitted against you, no chance. I'm not saying anything. I want to just listen to you say.
Animesh, maybe I'll just take liberties with the way you presented the question, because I've heard Altars of Madness so much. Maybe I don't need to hear it for the rest of my life. Maybe just because I haven't heard Covenant. Filter. Maybe because I haven't heard Covenant quite as much. I could survive without Altars, because it's just encoded in my DNA at this point. And Covenant is still, ironically, 28 years later, it's the fresher album in that respect. And I think it's just, for me, it's just, I'm so familiar with all the twists and turns of Altars. And even though I have heard Covenant a ton, I think that, and it was definitely one of those records that I listened to a lot while writing Choosing Death, because there was a whole chapter devoted to the major label deals.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I think I spent with all the earache stuff that came out on Columbia, like Heartwork and Wolverine Blues and Fear, Emptiness, Despair, and then in Covenant, with the Giant deal, I think I spent a lot of time with record, so it kind of like it had a different level of appreciation further into the catalog. So yeah, and this, you're asking me which one would I pick to listen to now going forward. It's probably Covenant.
Peter.
Are you actually asking me this?
Yeah, why not? Come on. Just wrap it up in a tiny little one sentence.
Wow. Now I'm actually thinking after, because I liked Altars of Madness so much. I'm just gonna go revisit Covenant again. That's what I would say. Go for it.
I didn't know if you were sitting there contemplating a life without Altars of Madness and what that would be like. Moment, like just like you're just kind of like it just washes over you. This is a horror.
Actually, I'm one of those guys in the artwork. Go for it, Animesh.
Covenant got more people to discover Altars of Madness, is what I would like to say. And it's pretty clear then that what my pick is on this question, it is Altars. I think that's a perfect way of saying it. Sometimes popularity helps you discover what the band what the band's original vision was, and I think that's the case with AOM. There's a lovely, like on a Reddit thread, I found this quote which kind of sums up at least what I think of Covenant, which is Covenant proved that they could still reach the heights of Altars, but still not reach Altars itself. And that's a controversial statement because you'll have a lot of Covenant fanboys. Like clearly, a lot of the Indian death metal bands would prefer Covenant.
I can see that, but I don't. Yeah. I'm trying to think of how many Indian death metal bands can kind of play that. To be honest,
not a lot. Not a lot.
Yeah.
Whew, wow, this has been exhaustive. This has been comprehensive. This has been long, but clearly, objectively, at least going by votes, it looks like Altars is the better album between the two. And is everybody okay with that decision? I know Peter is. Albert?
I am fine with it. The truth is I'd have been fine with either coming out on top.
Yeah, right? Because as I said in the beginning, it's all excellent quality death metal. So yeah, what was the point of this exercise? Just to waste 1.5 hours of your life.
No, we wanted more stories from Albert. We just wanted to hear about it.
To me, this exercise is great because we got to just see Peter just, remove any kind of critical aspects in the process. And just be like, no, fuck it. I'm just going with Altars again. Did I write anything down? Did I have any defense? No. My defense is on Altars.
On that note, this has been an absolute pleasure, Albert. I hope this was as enjoyable for you as it was for us.
Yeah, and I completely forgot. Congratulations on 200 issues of Decibel. I mean,
yep.
In a day and age where everyone's talking digital, you're still keeping that going. So major props to you, man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. And this was a total blast. I sincerely appreciate the invite. I'm glad we got to do these 2 records. And I didn't have to talk about Deicide for an hour. It was perfect.
Well, if you want to do that,
no, Cannibal Corpse, please, Cannibal Corpse. I want to hear Cannibal Corpse stories next.
We'll lay that up for the next one, maybe not, depending on all of our schedules. So you know how it is. Anyways, with that, it's a wrap on Horns Up this week. As always, you can find us at hornsuppod.com or on Twitter at hornsuppod. I'm on Twitter only at AsmoAni.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
And Albert, do you want to plug in your social media or how people can find you? Or does everyone in the metal world already know that?
If you don't
look for me on social media, just follow Decibel. Surely you can find it on all the stuff we're on, which is the basics: Instagram, Twitter. Facebook. I don't know how to use Twitch. And that's
Ladies and gentlemen, this was Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.